Do you know what it sounds like when someone stops breathing? Not in the movies, not the dramatic gasp and peaceful fade. I mean really stops breathing. There's this wet, rattling sound, then nothing. Complete silence. And in that silence, you realize you've just killed someone. Even if you tell yourself it was mercy, even if they begged you to do it, even if the cancer was going to kill them anyway, you still killed them. I know, because 3 years ago, I held a pillow over my wife's face until she stopped breathing, and I've been living with that silence ever since. My name is Daniel. I'm 54 years old. I teach high school history in Portland, Oregon. I coach JV basketball. I have a mortgage and a Subaru and a dog named Scout. I look like every other middle-aged man you'd pass at the grocery store. And I'm a murderer. The death certificate says my wife died of metastatic lung cancer. The hospice nurses said she passed peacefully in her sleep. The obituary said she fought bravely until the end. But the truth is, I suffocated her at 2:30 in the morning on a Tuesday in March because I couldn't watch her suffer anymore. And everyone, the doctors, the nurses, our families, our friends, believes she died naturally because I'm the only person who knows what really happened in that hospital room. Let me tell you about Sarah, because you need to understand who she was to understand why I did what I did. We met when we were 22, both teaching at the same underfunded public school in inner-city Portland. She taught English, I taught history. We bonded over terrible cafeteria coffee and the shared exhaustion of first-year teachers trying to reach kids who didn't want to be reached. We dated for 3 years, got married, bought a small house, adopted Scout when he was a puppy, built a life that was simple and good and enough. Sarah was one of those people who made everything better just by existing. She could calm down the angriest student, make colleagues laugh during faculty meetings, turn a bad day into something bearable. She had this way of seeing the best in people, even when they didn't deserve it, including me, especially me. We had 30 years together, 30 years of inside jokes and shared routines and quiet Sunday mornings. We never had kids. Tried for a few years, didn't happen, eventually decided we were okay with it just being us. We had our students, our dog, each other. It was enough, more than enough. Then, 2 years ago, Sarah started coughing, just a persistent cough she couldn't shake. She ignored it for months. Teachers don't have time to be sick, she'd say. By the time she finally saw a doctor, the lung cancer was stage 4, already metastasized to her liver and bones. The oncologist said maybe 18 months with aggressive treatment, maybe 6 without. Sarah chose treatment, chemo, radiation, clinical trials, everything they offered. She wanted to fight, said she wasn't ready to leave me yet, wasn't ready to abandon our life. So we fought. Spent our savings on treatments insurance didn't fully cover, watched her lose her hair, lose weight, lose the energy that had always defined her, watched her get smaller and paler and weaker while pretending to believe the doctors when they said there was still hope. There wasn't hope. The cancer kept spreading. New tumors showed up on every scan. After 8 months, her oncologist gently suggested we might want to think about palliative care instead of more treatment. Sarah refused, said she wanted to keep fighting. So we did. 3 more months of brutal chemo that made her violently sick. 3 more months of watching her suffer for treatments that were barely slowing the inevitable. Then she fell, got up in the middle of the night to use the bathroom, collapsed. The cancer had spread to her spine, weakened the vertebrae, fractured 2 of them in the fall. After that, the pain was constant. Morphine helped, but not enough. She couldn't walk without agony, could barely sit up, spent most of her time in bed, floating in and out of consciousness, occasionally lucid enough to ask me if I thought she was getting better. I'd lie, tell her yes, she looked stronger today. The doctors were optimistic. We'd get through this. All lies. Because what else could I say? That she was dying in the most brutal way possible, and all the suffering was for nothing? Her oncologist finally sat us both down and said the cancer was terminal. There were no more treatments to try. The tumors were everywhere now. She had maybe 3 months, maybe less. He recommended hospice care. Keep her comfortable, manage her pain, let her die with dignity. Sarah agreed. I think she knew by then. Maybe she'd always known and had been fighting for my sake as much as hers. We moved her to the hospice unit at the hospital. They set her up in a private room with a window that looked out over the city, gave her a morphine pump she could control herself, told us to let them know if we needed anything. The hospice nurses were wonderful, patient and kind and gentle with Sarah in ways I could no longer manage. They'd help her with the bathroom, change her sheets when she couldn't make it in time, adjust her pillows when the pain was bad. They'd talk to her about anything she wanted, books, movies, memories of teaching. They treated her like a person instead of a dying woman. I was grateful for them, but I also resented them because they got to leave at the end of their shifts. They got to go home and forget about Sarah until their next shift. I lived there, slept in the chair by her bed every night, woke up every time she moaned in pain, watched her deteriorate hour by hour. The first 2 weeks were manageable. Sarah was still mostly lucid. We'd talk about our life together. She'd tell me stories I'd heard 100 times. The first time we met, our terrible wedding DJ, the year Scout ate an entire Thanksgiving turkey off the counter. She'd cry sometimes and apologize for leaving me. I'd tell her she had nothing to apologize for, that she'd fought hard, that I was proud of her. All true, but also beside the point, because she was still dying and there was nothing either of us could do about it. Then the pain got worse, much worse. The morphine she'd been on wasn't enough anymore. They increased her dose, then increased it again, then started adding other medications, anti-anxiety drugs, sedatives, things to keep her from feeling the worst of it. But cancer pain breaks through everything eventually. She'd wake up screaming, begging me to make it stop. The nurses would come running, adjust her medications, try to calm her down. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. One night, she grabbed my hand and said, "Danny, I can't do this anymore. I can't. Please, please just let me go." "I know, baby. I know, but the doctors. I'm not asking the doctors. I'm asking you. Please, I just want it to be over." I told the nurses what she'd said. They nodded sympathetically and said this was common, that many terminal patients reached a point where they were ready to let go, that we should just keep her comfortable and let nature take her course. Nature was taking its course. It was just taking too goddamn long. She stopped eating, could barely keep down water. Her body was shutting down in stages. Kidneys first, then liver. Her skin turned yellow from jaundice. She'd drift in and out of consciousness, sometimes not recognizing me when she woke up. The nurses said it wouldn't be much longer, days, maybe a week. But it wasn't days, it was 2 more weeks. 2 weeks of watching Sarah exist in a state that wasn't really living, but wasn't dying fast enough. 2 weeks of her moaning in pain, even through maximum morphine. 2 weeks of her occasional lucid moments where she'd look at me with terror and beg me to help her. I started researching. Oregon has a death with dignity law. Terminal patients can request medication to end their lives, but you have to be mentally competent to make that request. You have to be able to self-administer the medication. Sarah was neither of those things anymore. She was too far gone. The system designed to let people die peacefully didn't work if you waited too long to use it, and we'd waited too long. I thought about asking the doctors to increase her morphine to a lethal dose, but hospice doesn't do that. They'll keep you comfortable, but they won't actively kill you. It's a legal and ethical line they can't cross, even when the patient is begging, even when keeping them alive is torture. So I was stuck, watching my wife suffer in ways that no person should have to suffer, knowing there was no hope of recovery, knowing she wanted to die, and knowing there was no legal way to help her. The night it happened started like all the others. I was in the chair by her bed. She was restless, moaning even in her medicated sleep. The nurses had checked on her at midnight, said they'd be back in a few hours. The night nurse was stretched thin, 3 terminal patients on the floor, and she was the only one on duty. Around 2 a.m., Sarah woke up. She was more lucid than she'd been in days. Looked right at me. "Danny, I'm here, baby. I can't do this anymore. I know. Help me, please. I'm so tired. It hurts so much. Please." "The nurses will be back soon. They'll give you more medication." "That's not what I mean, and you know it." She grabbed my hand with what little strength she had left. "Please, I'm begging you, just let me go. I know you can. I know you won't because you're scared, but I'm telling you it's okay. I want this. Please." I looked at her, really looked at her. This woman I'd loved for 30 years was barely recognizable. 90 pounds, yellow skin stretched over bones, eyes sunken in her skull. In pain despite medications that should have knocked out an elephant, begging me to help her die. And I made a decision. "Okay," I said. "Okay, I love you. I love you too. Thank you. Thank you." I stood up. My hands were shaking. I picked up her pillow, the second pillow she wasn't using because sitting up hurt too much. She watched me. Didn't look scared. Looked relieved. "Close your eyes," I said. She did. I placed the pillow over her face, gently at first, then firmer when I realized gentle wasn't going to work. She didn't fight, didn't move, just let it happen. I pressed down, counting in my head. 30 seconds, 1 minute, that wet, rattling sound, then silence. I removed the pillow, put it back where it had been. Sarah's eyes were still closed. Her chest wasn't moving. I stood there for maybe 30 seconds, trying to process what I'd just done. Then I hit the call button for the nurse. She came in about 2 minutes later. "Everything okay?" I think she stopped breathing. I was sleeping and I woke up, and she's not." The nurse moved quickly, checked for a pulse, listened for breathing, called for the on-call doctor. They confirmed what I already knew. Sarah was dead. Time of death, 2:47 a.m. The doctor was kind, said she'd passed peacefully, which was a blessing given how much she'd suffered, that this was the natural end to her illness, that I should be glad she wasn't in pain anymore. I nodded, cried, let them think I was grieving instead of horrified by what I'd just done. They asked if I wanted to stay with her for a while. I said yes. Sat there with her body for 2 hours, holding her hand, trying to figure out if I'd just committed murder or mercy. Both? Neither? The doctor signed the death certificate the next day. Cause of death, metastatic lung cancer. Nobody questioned it. Why would they? Terminal cancer patient dies in hospice. Happens every day. Nothing suspicious about it. Sarah's funeral was 4 days later. All our teaching colleagues came. Her sister gave a eulogy about how Sarah fought until the end with grace and courage. Our principal said Sarah was an inspiration. Everyone hugged me and said they were so sorry for my loss and that at least she wasn't suffering anymore. I accepted the condolences, thanked people for coming, told stories about Sarah when people asked, played the grieving widower who lost his wife to cancer after a brave fight. Nobody suspected. Why would they? I looked devastated. I was devastated, just not for the reasons they thought. The first few months after were a blur. I took leave from work, stayed home with Scout, couldn't sleep in our bed because that's where Sarah used to be, so I slept on the couch. Couldn't look at photos because they reminded me of who she used to be before the cancer. Couldn't think about the future because it was just stretching out empty ahead of me. But I also couldn't stop thinking about what I'd done, replaying it in my head. The pillow, her face, that silence. Had I pressed down too hard? Too long? Had she changed her mind in those final seconds and I hadn't known because I couldn't see her face? I told myself it was mercy, that she'd begged me to do it, that she was dying anyway and all I'd done was speed up the inevitable, that letting her suffer would have been crueler than ending it. I built a whole narrative around it being the right thing to do. But here's what I couldn't get around. If it was the right thing to do, why did I have to hide it? Why did I lie to the nurses? Why did I let them think she died naturally? If I'd really done something merciful and justified, wouldn't I have been able to tell the truth? I started having panic attacks, would wake up at 3 a.m., convinced the police were at my door, that somehow they'd figured it out, that they'd exhume Sarah's body and find evidence of suffocation, that the nurse who found us would remember something suspicious about how I acted, that I'd go to prison for murder. But months went by and nothing happened. No police, no investigation, just the normal aftermath of losing a spouse. People checking in on me, asking how I was doing, telling me grief takes time. I played along, said I was doing okay, taking it day by day, keeping busy. All true, but not the whole truth. I went back to work after 3 months. Couldn't afford not to. We'd burned through our savings on Sarah's treatment, and I still had a mortgage. My colleagues were understanding, gave me space when I needed it, checked in when I seemed off. They all assumed I was grieving my wife's death from cancer. None of them knew I was actually dealing with having killed her. I started seeing a therapist, told her I was struggling with grief and guilt. She asked what I felt guilty about. I said not being able to save Sarah, not finding her cancer earlier, not being strong enough to help her through her final weeks. All technically true, but not the guilt I was actually carrying. The therapist said survivor's guilt was common among people who'd lost spouses, that I needed to forgive myself for not being able to cure cancer, that Sarah wouldn't want me to spend the rest of my life beating myself up for not being able to save her. I nodded and agreed and kept seeing her weekly. It helped in some ways, but not in the ways that mattered, because I couldn't tell her what I'd actually done. 2 years later, I'm still teaching, still living in the same house, still sleeping on the couch because I can't bring myself to use our bedroom. Scout is getting old. I take him on walks every evening and think about Sarah, about our life together, about how it ended. I've dated a few times, nothing serious. Can't get close to anyone, because how do you build a relationship when you're hiding something like this? What do I tell them about Sarah? That she died of cancer? True. That I was with her at the end? True. That I helped her die? Can't say that part. I think about confessing sometimes. Walking into a police station and telling them everything. Finally being honest about what I did. But what would that accomplish? Sarah's still dead. I'd go to prison for euthanasia or murder, depending on how they charged it. My life would be destroyed. Sarah's memory would be tainted. People would focus on how she died instead of how she lived. And for what? So I could ease my conscience? That seems selfish. But living with this secret is destroying me in slower ways. I can't sleep properly, can't form real connections with people, can't move forward with my life because I'm stuck in that hospital room at 2:47 a.m., holding a pillow, listening to silence. The legal system calls what I did murder. I ended someone's life without their explicit, ongoing consent in that moment. Even if Sarah had begged me hours earlier, she couldn't consent while I was actually doing it because she had her eyes closed and a pillow over her face. Legally, I'm a killer. The medical ethics people would say I violated her autonomy and dignity, that there are proper channels for end-of-life care, that what I did was play God, that suffering is part of the human experience and we don't get to shortcut it just because it's difficult to witness. But I was there. I watched her suffer in ways that stripped away everything that made her her. I heard her beg me to help her, and I knew that she was going to die anyway within days or weeks. All I did was end it on a timeline that spared her additional agony. Was it mercy? Was it murder? The law says one thing. My conscience says something more complicated. Here's what I know for certain. I killed my wife, intentionally, with my own hands. I planned it in the seconds before I did it. I executed it. I covered it up, and I've gotten away with it completely because nobody suspects that a grieving husband would have killed the wife he loved. I'll never tell anyone. Can't tell anyone. This confession is as close as I'll ever come to honesty about that night, because the truth is too dangerous to speak aloud, too destructive to share. Sarah's been dead for 3 years. I still think about her every day, still miss her, still love her. But when I think about her final moments, I don't think about the 30 years we had together or the love we shared. I think about her face under that pillow, about that silence, about the fact that I'm the one who created that silence. People ask me sometimes if I found peace with her death. I say, yes, I have. Another lie. I'll never have peace with it, because peace requires either believing you did the right thing or accepting punishment for doing the wrong thing. I can't do either. I'm stuck in this gray space where I killed someone I loved for reasons I still think were justified, in a way I know was wrong. So I teach my history classes, coach basketball, take Scout for walks, go to therapy and talk about grief without mentioning guilt, date occasionally without getting serious, live a normal-looking life that's built on keeping one massive secret. That's my confession. 3 years ago, I suffocated my terminally ill wife with a pillow because she was suffering and begged me to end it. The death certificate says natural causes. The doctors never suspected. And I'm going to carry this secret until I die, because the truth would destroy what little peace her family has found and would destroy what's left of my life. I'm either a murderer who got away with it or someone who showed mercy in an impossible situation. I honestly don't know which, but I know I can never tell anyone the truth. Except I just did. To you. And now you know what I've been carrying for 3 years. That I killed my wife at 2:47 a.m. on a Tuesday in March. That everyone thinks she died of cancer. That I've been living a lie ever since. And that I don't know if I'm a monster or just a man who loved his wife enough to end her suffering when nobody would.